In the spring of 1943, a man walked into a police station in Millbrook, Pennsylvania. He had been walking for 3 days. His clothes were dirty. His boots were worn through at the soles. He told the officer at the desk that he needed to report something. He said he had stayed in a house approximately 15 miles south of town. He said he left because he realized the others had not left. The officer asked him to clarify. The man said he would try. A report was filed. It contained a statement and a description of the location. 2 officers were sent to investigate. What they found led to a search that lasted nearly 2 weeks. The case that followed was brief. The details were not widely reported. Much of what occurred remains undocumented. This is what is known. The house was located off State Route 36, down a narrow road that turned to dirt after the first half-mile. The road continued for another mile before ending at a clearing. The house sat at the edge of the clearing. Beyond, it were woods, dense, uncleared. No other structures were visible from the house. The nearest neighbor lived more than 4 miles away. According to county records, the property had been owned by the same family since 1911. The house had been built in 1908. It was a single-story structure. Wood siding, painted gray. A pitched roof. 4 rooms inside. A stone chimney on the west side. A small porch at the front. The windows were covered with curtains. The yard was bare dirt, packed down from years of use. The property had originally belonged to a man named Howard Marsh. He had lived there with his wife Iris and their 2 children. Howard Marsh died in 1929. Iris Marsh remained in the house with her son, Leonard, and her daughter Catherine. The children did not marry. They stayed with their mother. In 1935, Iris Marsh passed away. Leonard and Catherine continued to live in the house. They were 34 and 31 years old at the time of their mother's death. They did not leave the property often. They kept to themselves. Leonard Marsh had worked briefly on a road crew in the late 1920s. He left that job in 1930. There is no record of him working again. Catherine Marsh had attended school through the 8th grade. She worked for a short time at a dry goods store in Millbrook. She stopped working in 1933. After that, neither sibling held employment. They survived on what remained of their parents' savings and on income from occasional work Leonard did for neighboring farms. The work was irregular. It did not pay well. By the late 1930s, the savings were nearly gone. The house was in poor condition. The roof leaked, the porch sagged, the windows did not close properly. There was no electricity, no telephone. Water came from a well behind the house. Heat came from the fireplace and a wood-burning stove in the kitchen. The furniture was old. The wallpaper had peeled in several places. Neighbors who had visited the house years earlier described it as dark and cold, even in summer. During the 1930s and early 1940s, the United States was still recovering from the Great Depression. Although the economy had begun to improve, many people remained without stable work or housing. Men traveled from town to town, looking for day labor, farm work, or any opportunity that might provide food and shelter. These men were called transients or drifters. They moved frequently. They owned little. Many had no family. Many were not reported missing when they disappeared. It is believed that Leonard and Catherine Marsh began offering shelter to these men sometime in 1937. The exact date is not known. Neighbors reported seeing unfamiliar men walking along the road toward the Marsh property on several occasions between 1937 and 1942. One neighbor, a woman named Edna Purcell, said she saw Leonard Marsh in town in the fall of 1938. She said he was standing near the rail yard. She said he was talking to a man she did not recognize. She said the man was carrying a bedroll. She said Leonard gestured toward his truck. She said the man got in. She said she thought Leonard was offering him work. She did not think it unusual. Another neighbor, a man named George Lyle, said he passed the Marsh house on foot in 1940. He said he saw two men sitting on the porch. He said Leonard was standing in the doorway. He said the men on the porch looked tired. He said one of them was holding a bottle. George Lyle waved. Leonard did not wave back. George Lyle continued walking. He said he assumed the men were staying there temporarily. He said it was common in those days for people to offer a bed or a meal to men passing through. He said he did not give it much thought. According to the statement given by the survivor, he had been traveling from Ohio to Pennsylvania in search of work. He had heard there were jobs in the coal towns to the east. He had been walking along the highway when Leonard Marsh pulled over in his truck and asked if he needed a place to stay. The man said yes. Leonard told him he could stay at the house for a few days. He said there was no charge. He said food would be provided. The man accepted. When they arrived at the house, Catherine Marsh was in the kitchen. She did not greet him. She nodded. Leonard showed him to a small room at the back of the house. There was a cot, a blanket, a chair. The man said he was grateful. He said he had not slept in a bed in more than a week. Leonard told him supper would be ready soon. The man washed his hands and face at the well. He came inside. Catherine served stew and bread. She poured him a glass of water. She did not sit with him. Leonard sat across from him and watched. The man said the stew was thick and salty. He said it made him thirsty. He drank several glasses of water. He said he felt tired after the meal. Leonard told him he should rest. The man went to the back room and lay down. He said he fell asleep quickly. He said he slept for a long time. When he woke, it was dark. He did not know what time it was. He said he felt strange, heavy. He said his head hurt. He got up and went to the kitchen. Leonard was sitting at the table. He offered the man a cup of coffee. The man drank it. He said it tasted bitter. He went back to the room and slept again. The man said this continued for several days. He would wake, he would eat, he would drink, he would feel tired, he would sleep. He said he lost track of time. He said he could not think clearly. He said Leonard told him he could stay as long as he needed. He said Catherine rarely spoke. He said he did not see anyone else in the house, though he heard footsteps above him at night. He said the house had no second floor. On the fourth or fifth day, the man said he woke in the afternoon and felt slightly clearer. He said he noticed his boots were by the door, but the laces had been removed. He said his coat was still in the room, but the pockets had been emptied. He said he went to the kitchen and asked Leonard where his belongings were. Leonard said they had been moved for safekeeping. The man asked to have them back. Leonard said he would get them later. The man said he began to feel uneasy. That evening, another man arrived at the house. The survivor said he heard voices on the porch. He looked through the window and saw Leonard talking to a younger man, perhaps in his 20s. The younger man was thin. He carried a small bag. Leonard brought him inside. Catherine served him food. The younger man sat at the table and ate quickly. The survivor said he tried to speak to him. The younger man did not respond. He stared at his plate. After the meal, Leonard took him to another room. The survivor did not see him again. The survivor said he decided to leave that night. He said he waited until he heard no movement in the house. He said he put on his boots without laces. He said he took his coat. He said he opened the back door slowly. It creaked. He stopped. He waited. No one came. He stepped outside. He said the air was cold. He said he could see his breath. He walked quickly toward the road. He did not run. He said he was afraid running would make noise. He said he reached the road and turned south. He walked for the rest of the night. He said he slept in a barn the next day. He said he continued walking the day after. He said he reached Millbrook on the third day. He said he went to the police station because he could not stop thinking about the younger man. He said he did not know if the man was still at the house. He said he did not know what had happened to the others he had heard walking above him. He said he could not explain why, but he believed they had not left. On May 9, 1943, two officers drove to the Marsh property. They parked at the edge of the clearing and approached the house on foot. Leonard Marsh was standing on the porch. He did not seem surprised. He asked if there was a problem. The officers said they were investigating a report. They asked if they could come inside. Leonard said they could. Catherine was in the kitchen. She did not look up. The officers asked if anyone else was staying at the house. Leonard said no. The officers asked if they could search the property. Leonard did not object. The house was dark. The curtains were drawn. The officers found the back room where the survivor had stayed. The cot was still there. The blanket was folded. They found another small room on the opposite side of the house. It contained a cot and a chair. Nothing else. They found a third room that appeared to be used for storage. It contained old furniture, tools, and several crates. In one of the crates, they found clothing: men's shirts, trousers, a pair of boots, a hat. None of the items matched the clothing Leonard or Catherine was wearing. One of the officers asked Leonard where the clothing had come from. Leonard said it had been left behind by men who had stayed at the house. The officer asked how many men had stayed there. Leonard said he did not remember. The officer asked when the last person had stayed there. Leonard said a few days ago. The officer asked where that person was now. Leonard said he had left. The officer asked for the person's name. Leonard said he did not know. The officers searched the property outside. They walked the perimeter of the clearing. They examined the barn, which was small and mostly empty. They walked into the woods behind the house. Approximately 30 yards from the house, they found an area where the ground had been disturbed. The soil was darker. The vegetation was sparse. They returned to the house and requested assistance. A search team arrived the following day. The excavation took 1 week. In the area behind the house, investigators found remains. The remains were not intact. Identification was difficult. Over the course of the search, evidence of 7 individuals was recovered. The condition of the remains suggested they had been buried over a period of several years. Some had been there longer than others. The exact timeline could not be determined. Inside the house, investigators found additional items. In the kitchen, they found a cabinet containing bottles of patent medicine and several unlabeled jars. The contents of the jars were later analyzed. One jar contained a sedative. Another contained crushed pills that had been dissolved in liquid. In Catherine's room, they found a notebook. The notebook contained names, dates, brief descriptions. Some entries included notations such as left after 3 days or stayed 1 week. Other entries had no notation at all. The names in the notebook did not match the names on any identification found in the house or on the property. Leonard and Catherine Marsh were arrested. They were taken to the county jail. They were questioned separately. Leonard admitted that men had stayed at the house. He said they had offered food and shelter. He said some men had become ill. He said they had died. He said he and Catherine had buried them because they did not know what else to do. He said they did not report the deaths because they were afraid they would be blamed. When asked why the men had become ill, Leonard said he did not know. When asked about the sedatives found in the kitchen, he said they were for personal use. When asked why the men's belongings were still in the house, he did not answer. Catherine Marsh provided almost no information. She confirmed that men had stayed at the house. She said she had cooked for them. She said some of them had died. When asked how they had died, she said they were weak. She said they were sick when they arrived. When asked why they had not called a doctor, she said there was no telephone. When asked why they had not taken the men to a hospital, she said Leonard had decided it was not necessary. When asked if she had given the men sedatives, she said Leonard told her to. When asked why, she did not respond. Investigators reviewed missing persons, reports from surrounding counties. They found matches for 3 of the 7 victims. One was a man named Arthur Brennan, age 38, from West Virginia. He had been reported missing in 1939 by a cousin. His last known location was a work camp near Pittsburgh. Another victim was identified as James Collier, age 42, from Maryland. He had been traveling to Pennsylvania in search of work in 1940. His sister had filed a report when he stopped writing to her. The third victim was a man named Eugene Potts, age 29, from Ohio. He had left home in 1938 and had not been heard from since. His identification card was found in the storage room. The other 4 victims were never identified. They had no identification. Their names did not appear in any missing persons reports. Their belongings offered no clear information. One had been carrying a small Bible with an inscription that had faded. Another had a harmonica. A third had a pocket knife with no markings. The fourth had nothing. Leonard and Catherine Marsh were charged with murder. The trial took place in the county courthouse in the fall of 1943. The prosecution presented evidence recovered from the property. They presented testimony from the survivor. They presented the notebook found in Catherine's room. They called investigators who had participated in the search. They called the medical examiner who had examined the remains. They argued that Leonard and Catherine Marsh had deliberately targeted transient men, offered them shelter, incapacitated them with sedatives, and killed them when they were too weak to resist. The defense argued that the deaths were accidental. They said the men had arrived at the house already in poor health. They said Leonard and Catherine had tried to help them. They said the sedatives had been administered to ease suffering. They said the failure to report the deaths was due to fear and ignorance, not malice. They did not call Leonard or Catherine to testify. The jury deliberated for 8 hours. Both were found guilty. Leonard Marsh was sentenced to death. Catherine Marsh received a life sentence. Neither appealed. Several aspects of the case were never fully explained. It is not known when the killings began. The earliest confirmed victim disappeared in 1938, but investigators believe the pattern may have started earlier. It is not known how many men stayed at the house and left unharmed. Leonard Marsh claimed that many men had stayed there over the years. He said most of them had left after a few days. He said he could not remember their names. He said he did not keep records of everyone. The notebook found in Catherine's room contained only partial information. Many pages had been torn out. Others had been damaged by water. The entries that remained did not account for all 7 victims. It is not known what substance was used to sedate the men. The jars found in the kitchen contained compounds that could cause drowsiness, confusion, and weakness. The exact dosage and method of administration were never determined. It is not known whether the men were killed while sedated or whether they died from prolonged exposure to the substances. The medical examiner could not establish a clear cause of death due to the condition of the remains. It is not known whether Leonard acted alone or whether Catherine participated directly in the killings. Catherine claimed that Leonard had made all decisions. She said she had only followed his instructions. Leonard did not confirm or deny this. He said Catherine had done what was necessary. One investigator later stated that he believed the siblings had developed a system. He said they had learned to identify men who would not be missed. He said they had learned how much sedative to use. He said they had learned how to dispose of bodies without attracting attention. He said the notebook suggested they had kept records, possibly to track their actions or to avoid mistakes. He said he believed they had been operating for longer than the evidence indicated. He said the case was likely incomplete. Leonard Marsh was executed in January 1945. He was offered the opportunity to make a final statement. He declined. He was asked if he wanted to see a chaplain. He said no. He did not request any visitors. The execution was carried out without incident. A brief notice appeared in the local newspaper. It listed his name, his age, and the fact of his execution. It did not provide details of his crimes. Catherine Marsh remained in prison until her death in 1961. She did not speak to other inmates. She did not participate in prison activities. She worked in the kitchen for most of her sentence. Guards described her as obedient and withdrawn. One guard said she rarely made eye contact. Another said she moved as though she was still following instructions from someone who was no longer there. She died of heart failure. She was buried in the prison cemetery. No service was held. The house was torn down. In 1946, the property was sold. The new owner cleared the land and built a small cabin on a different part of the property. The cabin is still standing. The area where the house once stood is now overgrown. The 4 unidentified victims were buried in unmarked graves in the county cemetery. Their names are still unknown. The case was officially closed in 1945. In the years after the trial, a few people who had known the Marsh family spoke to reporters. Most requested anonymity. One man who had attended school with Leonard Marsh said Leonard had been quiet and unremarkable as a child. He said Leonard rarely participated in games or conversations. He said Leonard's family had been poor but respectable. He said he was surprised when he heard about the charges. He said he could not reconcile the boy he had known with the man who had been convicted. A woman who had worked with Catherine Marsh at the dry goods store said Catherine had been polite but distant. She said Catherine never joined the other girls for lunch. She said Catherine left work promptly each day and never socialized. She said she had always assumed Catherine was simply shy. She said she wished she had paid more attention. Another neighbor said he had driven past the Marsh house one evening in 1941. He said he saw a man standing at the edge of the woods. He said the man was not moving. He said he slowed down to get a better look. He said the man turned and walked back toward the house. He said he never saw the man again. He said he wondered if that man had been one of the victims. The records from the case are stored in the county archives. Photographs taken during the investigation still exist. They show the house, the rooms, the crates of clothing, the excavation sites, the remains. Access to these photographs is restricted. Researchers must apply for permission. Few requests are made. The land where the house stood is private property. The current owner does not allow visitors. There is no marker, no memorial. The road that led to the house is still passable, though it is rarely used. The woods behind the property are dense. They have not been cleared. 7 people are believed to have died on that property between 1938 and 1943. 4 of them are still unidentified. 1 man escaped. The others did not. It is not known how many men stayed at the house and left safely. It is not known how long the pattern continued before it was discovered. The case is closed. The questions remain.